Well, Bill Cosby has begun his prison sentence for sexually assaulting Andrew Constand in 2004. More than 60 other women have accused Cosby of sexually assaulting them as well. The 81-year-old will now have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. His spokesman called the trial, quote, racist and sexist, and says Cosby will appeal. We want to try now for Renee Graham. She's an associate editor and columnist at the Boston Globe. She recently wrote a piece called Bill Got What He Deserved. Renee joins us now. So, Renee, you write in your article, and you describe Cosby as, quote, someone who did not deserve mercy. If Cosby lives to serve every minute of his time behind bars, it's less than the life sentence his crimes inflicted on his victims. This is what you wrote. Why do you feel so strongly that he did not deserve an ounce of leniency?
Well, what mercy did he give his victims? These are women who trusted him, and he couldn't even show them basic human decency. He used that trust, he used his celebrity to drug them and sexually assault them. And he did this again and again and again for decades. You know, as you said, we're talking 60 plus women. You know, this trial was about one woman, Andrew Constand, but in a lot of ways, she represented, you know, these scores of women he sexually assaulted.
Do you think the sentence was ultimately, that was given, was adequate for his crimes?
No. It was a small justice. But you have to consider that, given the fact that a lot of these allegations fell outside the statute of limitations, this was the only case that could be brought to court. And so, you know, it's not satisfactory. You know, he has to serve a minimum of 3 years. His maximum sentence is 10 years. It hardly seems adequate given the crimes that women say he committed, but it's a small justice.
You know, the Me Too movement has been taking place alongside with the Cosby case. How much of an impact do you think this Cosby case will have on the public perception and ultimately the verdict here?
Well, you know, I think it's an important case. I think it's an important case because it is the sense of a powerful man being held accountable. And that doesn't really happen often in our society. We see time and time again where we'll hear about these things and it's outside the statute of limitations, or they can't get enough verification, and these cases fall by the wayside. So I think in terms of what the Me Too movement represents, which is accountability, I think it's very important in that regard. You
know, you mentioned accountability. You called Cosby a monster in plain sight. Do you think that his punishment will be enough to dissuade others from abusing their power, people who are public figures?
You know, I would like to think so, but I also doubt it. I think that there is a system in place that not only permits this sort of aberrant male behavior, but it also protects it and protects them from the consequences. And I think, that's what we have to keep coming back to, the fact of how does this happen? How does a Bill Cosby occur? How do we get a Harvey Weinstein? How do we have a Matt Lauer? How do we have these cases of men with extraordinary power who can get away with these sorts of things and sort of compile all these allegations and not really pay the price for it? So, I think it is about accountability, and I hope, I'm always sort of hopeful that there's some sort of sea change, but I also know that change in cases of this kind of thing can be really glacial.
Yeah, you talk about the glacial pace of change, especially for men who are up there in power. Renee, what would you say needs to happen next in this Me Too movement at this point? We got to a point of naming and shaming these men, getting some sort of justice. So what now?
Well, I don't think these men have been shamed. I mean, Bill Cosby is going to go to jail for, a minimum of 3 years, but he's 81 years old. But Bill Cosby has had a long, wonderful career in life. If it ends behind bars, so be it. But, I don't think anyone's being shamed. People are being, called to account for the things that they do. I think that's still an important part of this. I don't know that the accountability, step of the Me Too movement has already passed. I think we're still very much in the middle of that.
Mm. What's your hope next, Renee? Where would you like to see this movement heading?
I want to see it. I want to see cultural change. I think,
what would that look like, Renee?
I think cultural change is a system where, women or men who are victims of sexual assault or harassment have safe places to go within where they work, where they go to school. That's where, to me, where it really starts. If you have a system that's set up and people don't feel like they can do that, then that just makes this, it exacerbates the whole problem. I think you need a place where people, whether it's human resources in the office place, there have to be places where victims can go and tell these stories and have something done about it.
Renee Graham, Grateful you could join us, Renee, with the Boston Globe. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your time.
Thank you, Rena.